Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DECA and MDA panel today. We're going to be discussing maximizing a telethon moment for brand awareness, partner activation, and cause raising. My name is Allison Tibbetts, and I'm with the Muscular Dystrophy Association. I am honored to pass this over to my colleague at DECA, Jasleen Kaur.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jasleen Kaur, and I'm a senior at Deer Park High School. It's in Long Island, New York. I'm currently serving as the New York DECA State President. Most of you probably already know that MDA and DECA has a wonderful partnership, and it's given DECA members the opportunity to both raise awareness and funds for the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and that's where students like us come in. Just this past summer, I was able to participate in the pilot MDA Muscle Corps program. Not only did I learn how to run a successful cause-raising campaign, but I was also able to gain a better understanding of how servant leadership fits into my professional and personal philosophies. So I'd like to start off by asking the panelists to please introduce yourself and share with us what role you played in the creation of the MDA Telethon.
Hi, I'm Eva Mutri, and I am the Senior Director here at Senior Digital Director here at MDA. And when it came to the role that I played overseeing the MDA Telethon, it was overseeing all the digital aspects. So the things from getting the website up and running, from the paid advertising and the search terms, the social campaign, and even working with our PR teams and our sponsorship teams to ensure that we're aligned with an overarching strategy and messaging and what we're going to do. And the biggest thing is working with Kevin Hart and his team on what our social posts are going to be, when we want to have those donation messages and so forth like that. So that was my main role in the MDA Telethon. So from here, I can turn it over. I think it's to Kathy.
Oh, I think I'm next. So all good. Hey, everybody. I'm Kellen Williams. I work over at CSM Sports and Entertainment. So it's a full-servicing marketing agency that works with a bunch of clients in sports and entertainment, but as well as in other areas like nonprofit. So, Muscular Dystrophy Association is an organization that's been around for, 70 years. This is the anniversary, and we were really excited to join and be a teammate on this venture to, really bring forth the telethon that used to be a mainstay, and we're excited for it to come back this year. We had a number of different ways that we had a role in the telethon coming back. I'll just point on maybe 3 or 4 different ways. So, my role, brand partnerships, is I'm always the person that's trying to drive revenue for different organizations, and I was happy to help do so with the MDA. We essentially served as like the nerve center. You can imagine with this incredible undertaking, with all the things that we had to do. When I say we, I'm talking about MDA and all of MDA's partners. There are a lot of moving parts. So you can say that CSM served as the point guard, and we tried to, dish the ball when appropriate. But our main focus on my team was with driving revenue and trying to, fundraise as best possible by bringing on new partners. But in addition to that, there's something else that we did with the telethon, and that's gaming. So we had the gaming portion that was a lead up on Saturdays leading up to the event on October 24th. And then we had a big gaming event going on the actual day of the telethon on October 24th. And we helped to do all things associated with that. And that was really exciting. And then, as you can imagine, we have to let people know about this event, right? Both before, during, and also after. So there's a bunch of social marketing that took place, and CSM was very much involved with all the social marketing as well as the web development. So, all 4 things put together helped to bring on a really incredible show and raise a lot of dollars for a great cause. So now I'll pass it on to Brian.
Thanks, Kellen. So Brian Byrne, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at MDA. My role at Telethon, as with many of my colleagues, I wore several different hats during the creation of the Telethon. My team and I were responsible for generating awareness for the Telethon. We did this on both paid and owned channels, and we were supported by a massive PR effort. I led the advertising efforts to drive tune into the live streamed telethon, get eyeballs on the show. Our group supported sponsor acquisition efforts. You just heard Kellen, you'll hear from Kathy in a moment. By providing like customized sales support materials and support for pitch meetings. You heard Kellen just talk about our gaming. So the MDA Let's Play for a Cure Game-a-thon culminated in this epic 10-hour stream on and telethon integration on that day. I was part of a team which created a donor stewardship strategy for anyone who gave to MDA as part of the telethon effort, making sure that we are appropriately thanking those donors and stewarding them and not following up with immediate asks or solicitations, etc. I oversaw the development and fulfillment of telethon branded merchandise, right? Every event needs some swag and everyone loves the swag. And lastly, we wouldn't have been successful, MDA would not have been successful in this telethon effort without the support of some really strong partners like CSM. And so part of what I did was to lead a weekly all-agency meeting where we brought CSM and at times up to 9 other partner agencies who were supporting the telethon all together on a weekly call to share, to coordinate, to share status, to share updates, etc., to get everyone on the same page. And I'll pass to Kathy.
Thanks, Brian. My name is Kathy Kaufman. I'm the Chief Strategy and Development Officer for MDA. My role in the telethon was to focus on all things related to revenue, but also connecting mission to that revenue to existing donors, as well as potential new corporate partners and existing partners. And of course, that included things like rallying our internal MDA fundraising team, coaching and modeling for MDA internal team, as well as pitching myself with Kellen and others from CSM to make sure that we had a robust pipeline, that we were reaching clients of all different partnership sizes, and that we were representing the MDA as not only an opportunity for a media buy or some big name stars on television, but also to make sure that we were talking about things with partners like the Americans with Disabilities Act and the 30th anniversary of that, to Kellen's point, the 70th anniversary of MDA, and really a reimagining of the brand of MDA for those we serve. So with that, Jasleen, I'll go back to you.
It looks like Jasleen might have gotten kicked off, so I will go ahead and ask the next question. Can you share a little bit more about why the MDA decided to reimagine a telethon and specifically why now?
So I think, the telethon has been part of the MDA culture and family, and, it had stopped, and I think it was 2016. Kathy, you may know better. Yeah. But it had stopped, and, by getting us out of that spotlight and so forth, people started to forget what MDA was all about and what our mission was. And right now was, with COVID and with everything that was happening, it just seemed like here was an opportunity where everybody is home. People want to do something positive, and why not try and do something and bring MDA back into the light of what our mission is, what we're trying to accomplish in the neuromuscular space with research and, our care centers and all the information that we have about these diseases. So it was a huge opportunity for us. It was a quick undertaking, but this was the time to do it. And this is why we went and got it done.
No, thanks, Eva, for that description there. It's interesting, that question, because I feel like that's a question that myself, Kathy, Deb, and others had to often answer when speaking to different potential partners. I kind of, on the board in front of me, I have all the things I need to remember, and the 4 things that I always kept in front of me were the 4 things that are important for MDA with respect to where the money is going and why it's being raised. And that was always, well, you need to use this money to fund critical research. You had to create a path to a cure, increase accessibility, and decrease health disparities. And I always try to bring that to the forefront because it wasn't just a marketing buy for a lot of these brands. It was about how can you connect with people during a time when over the last 8 months has been nothing but, you know, an upside down lifestyle that we've all been living. All of these things are happening that are unexpected. People are losing their jobs and entertainment has gone away. Can't go to the movies. There's no live entertainment. Sports aren't being played until really June came, early July, once NBA came back. So it was like, what can we do, to Eva's point, that could really be appointment television, right? To have it be a family affair, everybody sit down for a good cause and hear why NBA has always been around, right? And this is a great time to shine the spotlight back on it. And something else that Eva said that was really important and would help in our conversations is, well, what are some of the things that are actually happening around the country that NBA does? And having, you know, 150 plus care centers all throughout the country, you know, having this kids camp, which is an incredible experience that everybody really points to as being, you know, so inspirational and helpful for them in their development. I think that that was really key. And also the fact that there's just been so much money raised to this point, people need to know that they're part of a greater community. Anything that they give, whether it be an individual or whether it be a corporation, they're part of a greater whole. And that's community efforts to really help people. So, you know, I think that that's the way that I would answer that question. So I'll pass it on to Brian.
Oh, thanks, Kellen. And I will, you know, both really good and spot on answers. So I'll try not to repeat. I will say, though, that, you know, in addition to everything you guys mentioned, you know, I heard you both kind of mention the pandemic, you know, really starting in March. We saw our, you know, forecasted revenue basically fall off a cliff, right? We saw our in-person events being canceled. We saw individual giving slowing to a crawl as job losses mounted and, right, the economy stuttered. And so, you know, we fully saw 60% of our revenue kind of wipe off the books. And that made us have to make reductions on the cost side of the business. And so, you know, basically, you know, whittling our staff down to a very small team, not trying to kind of turn things around and bring the agency through this difficult time. You know, if that wasn't enough, really the media cycle during kind of the spring and summer went from covering the pandemic to focusing, you know, during the pandemic time, focusing on food and shelter organizations, not so much those of us in the rare disease space. And then there was a shift to racial equality and social justice organizations as the Black Lives Matter movement really gained momentum. And so we were looking for ways to break through, right? We were looking for novel concepts that were going to allow us to, in that environment of everything that you've heard from Kellen and Eva, and you know, the media not really, you know, there not being much media space to focus on voluntary health orders. We were looking for different ideas to how to break through. And with the kind of long history of the telethon and it being such an important part of American culture, we just saw it as the right time to bring it back.
That's great.
Kathy?
Yes, thanks, Brian. You know, I really look at the timing as a time where this brand and this cause really deserves to be noticed. And I know that we, you know, Kellen mentioned that there's a possibility that people had forgotten that at the core of MDA and those who partner with us, like DECA as a great example, are concerned about things like diversity, inclusion, empowerment, accessibility. And we had an opportunity to actually position our clients, those with neuromuscular disabilities, in a way that shows them as the active, empowered, talented, skilled people that they are, number one, because of some of the work that MDA has done in the past. Number two, that the need still exists in a way that it never has before. If we can continue to accelerate science to a level that we will eventually have earlier diagnoses and eventually a cure, we can, again, make some headway in terms of accelerating that science and accelerating our funding. And this was definitely our opportunity. I know that we had an awful lot of feedback about the fact that the timing was excellent, because we've all been chomping at the bit to actually see inspirational stories and hear inspirational stories, and really highlighting the work of our partners and our clinicians and our scientists, uh, and our our population of over 300,000 people who are living with neuromuscular disabilities. It really, we I think it was a game changer for the brand of MDA that is really helping so many, and we have so many partners that are heroes along with our clients.
So I'll ask the next question. How did the telethon position MDA in a new light to our donors and constituents?
So I think the telethon actually brought in people. So if we talk about the new constituents, a lot of people didn't know who MDA was and what our mission was and what we stood for. And I think this brought in a new audience, especially by leveraging Kevin Hart and the talent pool that he brought to the table for the telethon. I mean, it was an audience that would have never even thought about MDA unless there is an actual reason where they know somebody, a family member, or some type of relationship, right? But it was a brand new audience that we have never seen. And I think the biggest thing about it, it was the education of what MDA stood for. When we talk about our current constituents, I think it brought like a revival. In the past, we've been focused about Jerry Lewis and what he did, and he's done so many great things for us. But what we forgot was that, yes, they have a disability, but they have all these other abilities that they do. And that is what we brought. Just because you have a disability of some sort, that's not the only thing we focus on. What we focus on is all the other capabilities that everybody that lives with neuromuscular disease has, and living with a disability is just part of that. So I think that was the biggest thing. I think our current sponsors and our constituents saw that we changed things into a positive light. We took all of our talent and everybody that volunteered and that was a part of the show, and showed everything positive that they were doing and that what they can do. And I mean, there's a lot of things that they're doing that I wouldn't even be able to do. I mean, Justin, who is our advocate, and he also is trying to cure his own disease. So there's those types of things. And I think that was the biggest thing. And I will turn it over to Kellen.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. One thing that you said that really stands out is something that I'll always remind myself and tell others is, me not liking the word disability. And I would always I'm a very visual person. So I would see the word disability written in black and take red marker and put a line through the DIS and always think about ability, right? And the fact that we all are special in different ways, and, how can we bring that to life? And that's special, right? That thing that makes us special. To me, it's an opportunity to really focus on joy and excitement. There are really two different ways that people come together in life, and it's usually around joy and excitement or sadness and despair. Don't want to focus on the sadness and despair. I want to focus on the joy and the excitement, and that's why I thought it was really cool, the timing of this telethon, to really talk about MDA, because we had already been through several months of people being uncertain of what's going to happen, and now we were kind of turning the corner, and it was talking about, well, what does the future look like, right? How can we come together in order to make 2020 better leading into 21? And that's why it was so exciting to talk about MDA in this way, such that MDA is going to be that rallying cry, right? MDA is going to be the organization that's going to enable you to look to your left and your right, and you feel thankful for the things that you have, right? You don't worry about what you don't have, and you think about how can we help to continue on this trend of really, being creative and pivot and inventive. Like, I think sometimes, people talk about this opportunity in chaos, right? And I think that that's what 2020 was all about. And MDA is that opportunity. And it's an opportunity to bring to light a collection of community of people that without having something like COVID and everything happen in 2020 is really easy to be overlooked. And now it's like, let me step into the light and say, like, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it. Come be a part of this, right? And that's what was exciting for me, and that was, you know, why the partners that came aboard were really excited to, you know, to speak with their dollars. So I'll pass it on to Brian now.
Thanks, Kellen. And I'll just, you know, I'm pleased to hear and will echo what Evan Kellen said, because to me, the biggest shift for MDA and coming to this telethon was this shift in focus to really highlighting and celebrating the abilities and the differences of all of these individuals that live in our community. And it's a real shift for us because you know, in the past, that the model tended to really be one where we focused on the needs of individuals and used that to raise money. And there's you know, this shift to just celebrating these individuals. It's just a real game changer for us, and I think is really right in this day and age, as kind of Kellen was noting. The other thing I want to talk about, though, was this shift in our host of the telethon. So the starting point for running this telethon was finding someone to host it. And, you know, I can assure you it took several months, and there were, you know, different names that came up and different individuals that were spoken with. You know, we were looking for someone who was capable of filling Jerry Lewis's larger-than-life shoes, someone who was capable of attracting A-list stars as guests to the show, you know, really important. Someone who was capable of hosting a variety show like this in an audience-less environment. You know, imagine kind of being a comedian telling jokes to a room full of silence. Like, you know, there's nothing to live off. And so we really needed someone who was going to be able to really pull that off, you know, working with guests who are virtual and remote. Some recorded asynchronously, like at different times. So there's just a real challenge. So really finding that host who we thought was talented enough and capable enough to pull all that off really shifted our positioning a bit, because inherently that new host brought a new audience to MDA, one that who we, you know, were not interacting with in the past. And so a whole new world of constituents and supporters were exposed to our brand and our mission that hadn't been in the past. And so that was a big shift for us. Kathy.
Thanks, Brian. You know, one of the things that has been highlighted throughout this conversation is this idea that the former organization, in some ways, certainly the former telethons, were a pity party, right? Were provocative in potentially a negative way to those we serve. So we went to great pains to make sure, number one, that we looked directly to our community of those with neuromuscular disabilities and asked them to form a committee and be in the writer's room. And that is not something that had happened previous to this reimagining of the telethon. And what we got out of that experience as staff people, as marketers, as donors to the organization, goes beyond inspiration, but rather aspiration, because you see people with unique challenges of neuromuscular disabilities, and they are doing things that people with, you know, more physical abilities, for example, you would think would be able to do more of. So it goes beyond inspiration, but aspiration to whomever is watching, whether you have a diagnosis of a neuromuscular disease or MS or cancer or none of those diseases. The show was aspirational because we actually had representation from those we serve to inform the narrative. And I really do think it set us up for great success moving forward. And again, it gave us some brand lift that we didn't have before, because, you know, to be an authentic organization, you have to talk to those you serve. And we did that. And I think I am incredibly proud of that work. And and obviously incredibly proud that DECA helped us lift that up even with Muscle Core and really helped us make that connection. So it's again, it was a great time to do this and to really show our stuff to our partners, to our community, and with our partners and with the community we serve.
The next question is, how does a moment like the MDA Telethon help lift up new cause raising and fundraising efforts?
So I think by having such a big moment, there's the trickle effect, right? So even though you have this one big shiny moment, you see a lot of things that happen in the aftermath of it. We were seeing donations and fundraising occur and coming in weeks after the event, which was great. We saw high donations come in from like search terms when the event was over. And I think that was the big thing about that is, you know, understanding that you do have this one fundraising moment, but it's the aftermath that, like, how do you survive, not even survive, how do you stay on that wave of that moment? And how do you continue that effort and keeping that moment alive, even though the messaging may shift because it's no longer the telethon and you're promoting, you know, all the different research that is out there or a new drug that the FDA just approved and those kind of things. And by doing that and by having this moment, we are able to now, people will now know, oh, I know what the MDA is. It was part of that telethon. So it's the association of those types of things. And that is what I think the biggest thing for us from a fundraising and causing effort is seeing that take place. Turn it over to Kellen.
Yeah, no, thank you. You know, I find that the timing with which we went out to the marketplace to try to generate interest from partners was interesting because, you know, all the things that were happening across the country with George Floyd in May and June, and, you know, the emphasis on, you know, the lack of equity, right? The need for inclusion, diversity, all those things were really interesting to me because this was a community that really, you know, embodied inclusion, diversity, right? The need for equity. But when you think about companies' response around the country to what was happening around the country with Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, you saw a lot of corporate, I would say, posturing, where people want to be a part of the conversation, but they had no history of having done that before. So it's like, here's an opportunity to take advantage of that. Now let me give a little bit of money or let me make a statement and then, okay, I'm good. Like I did what I had to do and I'm going to keep it moving. That was something that I was really sensitive to. And I would try to understand my sensitivity to that and try to bridge that gap between what I was doing with MDA to try to speak to brands and say, we want you to be a part of this conversation, but this conversation is not an inflection point. This conversation is the continuation of a relationship, or it's the beginning of a relationship. Because therefore, anybody that sees your support of MDA would not question you as an organization. They're going to see that you are invested and you want to see this community fully thrive for many years to come. So that's why when we would have these conversations, it actually was more than the telethon. We would talk about what ways can you support MDA beyond the telethon. This might be the first time you're doing it, but let's talk about what this looks like leading into the holiday season in Q4, leading into 21 with Q1, leading into the telethon the next year, right? So that's the way that I approached it, and I thought that that was a good way of doing so because it would only strengthen the amount of donations that MDA can have in the corporate partners, but also from their perspective, strengthen their relationship, not just with MDA, but also with their constituents. So.
Yeah, and I'll add, I mean, anytime you can bring together this amount of celebrity star power, it just allows you to shine a light pretty much anywhere you want in ways that, you know, few other kind of opportunities allow for. I've been in kind of nonprofit marketing fundraising for over a decade, and I can tell you with without fail, like nonprofits rely heavily on celebrities and want celebrities associated with their cause because it does allow them to break through in these ways that we'd be unable to. So, I mean, I'll just give you some examples because we've done them with all this Star Power, putting on a telethon. We took advantage of that to run other fundraising opportunities. So there was a whole charitable auction that was set up. In fact, 2 charitable auctions that we ran alongside the telethon, which again, without all these stars, we would not have run. One was celebrity kind of merchandise, either signed gear, that sort of thing, and the other we were standing up had to do with experiences with celebrities. We mentioned the gaming earlier. We stood up a really large game-a-thon. I mean, MDA has had a gaming program for a while, but we were able to create a gaming event that drew over 700,000 viewers. And our normal gaming event gets a few hundred. So just to give you a sense of the scale that these types of celebrities can bring to an organization like ours. So, to me, it's in addition to everything that Eva and Kellen said, this type of star power really allowed us to unlock press coverage, it allowed us to unlock giving, it allowed us to unlock new sponsorships and partnerships. It allowed us to unlock pro bono partnerships from agency partners, agencies, working with us for free because they wanted to be part of such a great event. So, again, harnessing all of that star power. And now it's a question of how do we keep that going and how do we keep the momentum going and continue to use that to look for new opportunities. Again, we're still in the age of the pandemic. We're still challenged to break through. We're still challenged to stay relevant. And so, to the extent that we can continue to draw on this event and this experience, it'll benefit us and our community going forward.
Yeah, all great points. And, I think about this new cause raising as actually getting beyond the transaction, because as it turns out, I've been in the nonprofit industry for about 25 years. And the actual what you raise is the lag indicator, we like to call. The lead indicator is the relationships that you can form. And you use the shiny object, right? The star power, the moment, that celebration, not only to highlight your the neuromuscular disease community, but to talk about the fact that we do need relationships with donors. We need relationships with companies to be able to do this work. But for me, it really is about getting beyond the transaction and forming long-term and meaningful partnerships with donors and with sponsors and with talent that supports the work, obviously, that we are doing for the neuromuscular disability community and, quite frankly, all communities with disabilities. I think that's also an important point to make.
I'd like to ask our panelists, what learnings would you like to share and what tips would you have for our DECA students?
Ooh, learnings. Don't rush it. Next time I'd like to plan more than a couple weeks out or 6 weeks out or whatever it was. No, but I think the biggest learnings from us, from my perspective, was, getting contracts and getting those types of things, the nuances and stating, and the way that I'm going to just put it is ask for the world and state exactly what you want in that world, and then let them come back and say, we're not going to do this. I think that was a big challenge for us, especially in my space, in the digital space, of like what we can do and what we cannot do, and what Kevin can say and what Kevin can't say, and just those kind of things, and even what his friends are able to do for us, and those types of items. So I think that was a big learning for us. I think that's something that we are definitely going to take into next year, and trying to make sure that the content, even as you probably know in the social space, the more authentic, the better, versus something that looks like it's almost promoted. tips for you guys. You know, obviously my world is the digital world and the social world and those kind of things. Is just, you know, try to stay active in that stuff. Educate, inform yourself what goes on, how things work, and how, especially in digital, how quickly things change, to be able to adapt and change with it. Always try to be a couple steps ahead of it. And my philosophy is you're planning 10 steps ahead of what's currently trending right now in digital. So that would be my advice for you, is always try to think what the next 10 steps would be versus what you're focusing on now, because that'll change very quickly. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kellen.
Yeah, no, thank you. I would just say the ability to pivot and be adaptable to any situation. You know, if you just think about this entire year, you know, once it started off, I know, you know, I had a like kind of like a vision board that you would make at the beginning of the year, and the majority of the things that happened throughout this year were not on that board. And you know, I think about what we collectively had to deal with in order to have this program come to life. There are a lot of moving parts, and you know, I would say, you know, advice to you is be nice to everybody. You never know, you know, how a relationship today could mean for tomorrow. The ability for your, I would say, your brand that you're indirectly developing by ways of the relationship and the way that you're dealing with people on an everyday basis is going to help to, you know, for you to you accelerate in anything that you would like to do in your life. You know, there's something that a friend of mine said over the weekend, and I was like, man, it's so true. It's that, you know, everybody wants to have the best experiences, but the experiences that are made available to you are nothing more than a product of the habits that you create for yourself. So if you think about that, then, you know, whatever it is that you want, the way that you manifest that is by having consistent action on an everyday basis, not just for yourself, but with everybody around you. And I think that will enable you through the power of community, right? Because people trust you to solve problems, to come to solutions, to be able to pivot and and to adapt and all that good stuff. So like Brian said before, you know, he was leading a meeting that had 9 different agencies involved. If you're talking about 9 different agencies, you're talking about at least 5 people from each agency, all having different ideas, all having different thoughts, all trying to come together, right? The only way for those things to happen seamlessly is by being accountable, being trustworthy, and following through. So that's my advice.
Nice, Kellen. You know, I'll share a few learnings, which are all kind of based around the same thing, and they're kind of tactical, but they're, you know, truly they are strategic in the big picture. So when we thought about who we wanted to reach with marketing efforts for the telethon, we identified kind of 2 audience groups. You know, one was what we call kind of the next generation audience. This is younger, like 18 to 34-year-olds, and very much, you know, who you would think are the followers of celebrities like Kevin Hart. You know, the second piece was an audience that was 50 plus. We call them the nostalgia audience, and these are likely people who were familiar with the old MDA Telethon, and, you know, potentially were MDA donors either currently or in the past. And so while we set out to reach them, we were relying on Kevin Hart's social media to reach the younger audience, knowing that that's, you know, indexes really highly there. And so we relied on our paid budget to reach the 50 plus crowd. And what we learned was that our paid budget was not nearly strong enough to drive enough of this over 50 crowd into the multi-platform live stream. So that the show was streamed on several different platforms. But we were missing a network TV partner, so it didn't show up on network TV, and so we had to rely on our own marketing dollars to drive the tune-in effort. Versus when you're on a network, you know, they've got their sort of processes to drive tune into all the different shows that they're featuring, and so we were missing that. And absent that, we learned that our marketing budget was too small to drive the kind of scale that we wanted in that 50 plus range. And so, learning for next time, get on a network or get a much bigger marketing budget. And we'll see how both those go. I think a tip is, relates to what Kellen was mentioning. I mean, it's really about over communicating in my mind. When you have an effort this large, there are so many different things happening, so many different decisions made day in and day out in different meetings, so many meetings happening, and you can't possibly be in all of them. And so for the ones that you're in, you just got to over communicate. Make sure you're over communicating with all the relevant and appropriate people, exactly what's being decided in the meetings you're in and why. And if you miss something, if you're not communicated with about something, know that it's, that there's no, there's no bad intentions in having you miss something. It's just people working at breakneck speed and, doing their best to push forward a huge amount of work, and maybe not finding that time to over communicate. So really, I think a very, both a concerted effort to communicate on a regular basis, and also the means and processes with which to do so, and to reach everyone that needs to be reached.
That's excellent. All these excellent comments. One of the things that I really thought about going into this telethon as I'll call myself a veteran fundraiser with a number of organizations. And what I think actually DECA members could benefit from is this idea of, what do you want to be known for? What do you stand for? And who do you stand with? Because if you can really wrap your mind around those questions, it will inform everything you do moving forward. And on a big project like a telethon, you have to go back to that core. I would also recommend to DECA members that connecting mission and purpose and passion to any pitch in life that you make. Jesleen, you mentioned 13 college applications, and really making those connections, whether it's a college application, whether it's you're selling something, whether you are in a job interview. If you remember those core things, what do you want to be known for? What do you stand for? And who do you stand with? Sorry, my CEO is calling. Those will get you through, I think, both the toughest moments and the easiest moments of whatever it is you are tackling. And I was in a situation this year that this was a big project for all of us at MDA, and certainly Kellen. And going back to those values really makes things much easier in the long run.
So I'd like to open it up to our last question. Is there anything else you'd like to share about maximizing the MDA Telethon moment for brand awareness, partner activation, and cause raising?
I think from our perspective, the brand awareness, we were lacking 100%. And I think by doing the MDA Telethon, by what Kevin brought to the table, by what his friends brought to the table, really brought the awareness back to MDA. Keeping that momentum going is still something that we still have to work towards, because it costs money. We know that we're an organization that is still trying to compete with a whole bunch of other nonprofit healthcare organizations, but it brought to light a lot of what we stand for in our mission. And I think if we stay true to that mission and keep that momentum going about showing the positive aspects of what we are doing for those living with neuromuscular disease, that'll, I think, definitely help. We, learn some of the learnings with what Kevin's audience brings to the table and those types of things, and what they do, how we benefited from that aspect. I think that's something that we would just, alter probably a little bit more for next year. if there's a telethon, which I hope there is. But just altering some of those learnings, knowing who performed, who doesn't perform, on what channels they perform on, and it's just a lot of that. But I think it's just it has brought MDA more to the forefront, where we were always in the background and just trying to get up in line. So turn it over to Kellen.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'll just be really brief with mine and just say that I think the earlier that we can get out the message that a telethon is happening, what the MDA, just to take actually what Kathy said, right? What do you as a brand want to be known for, right? And does that involve partnering with an organization like MDA that stands for, right? And then you go into what MDA stands for, and then how do you want to be remembered, right? I think that we're in an interesting spot because 21, I think we'll see what happens. Maybe not the first quarter, but maybe as we move into Q3 and Q4. But I think that the name and theme of 21 is going to be all about recovery, right? And it's all about a comeback. So how can we own that message as early as possible in order to generate awareness and have people understand that we're not new to this, we're true to this. We've been doing this for a long time, right? So come aboard and let's make it happen. So I think the earlier that we can do that, the better, because brands are trying to figure out how they want to spend their money, whether it be for pure marketing spends or whether it be for something that is, purpose driven, such as the MDA. So that's what I'll say.
I like that, Kellen, the 2021 being about recovery. So I'll just add that, I do think that the telethon kind of forced our hand a little bit in terms of how we show the community that we serve. I mean, again, we've talked about it a bit here. Ava mentioned it. It's really a major shift for us to focus on supporting the abilities of individuals living with neuromuscular disease. And frankly, we're still only reaching a small part of the community, right? There's over 300,000 individuals afflicted with some kind of neuromuscular disease in the U.S., and we serve maybe a third of them. And so there's a lot more work to be done. And so we are hopeful that this shift in focus in really celebrating all of these individuals for the unique individuals that they are will help us to stand apart and help us to stand out and really help drive awareness and drive a knowledge of MDA as an organization who really respects the neuromuscular disease community and doesn't fall into those, some of the traps we talked about earlier, like these pity parties and really focusing on disabilities. These individuals, again, they all have their own talents. They are, they're unique. They're not necessarily, any less a person than you or me. And so for all of our communications going forward, are going to take this type of, to take that sort of message and carry it through. And that's what I look forward to most.
And honestly, echoing what everybody said, one of the things that's been on my mind is this idea of stick with us. And DECA actually did that this year in a big way, not only stuck with us, right? And the great work of Muscle Core, Jesleen, that you were a part of, but this idea that doing something that's bigger than ourselves, that will also help us, right? We get a benefit from helping others. There's no doubt about it. The dividends are great. But this idea of continuing to endear our partners, our organizational partners, our sponsors, and our donors, and quite frankly, our employees and our great agencies to stick with us, because this is bigger than any one of us, and we all need to decide and say yes to it. And my guess is, we obviously have new leadership at MDA. My guess is that we will be doing another telethon. we're not sure what it will look like or when it will be yet, but there is certainly movement in that direction to continue this reimagining. So that is the one thing I think, again, looking at the way we think about charity, how we do business, what it actually means for all of us, whatever, part of the equation we happen to be, it's important to continue the work and stick with it.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you so much to all of our panelists today. It was wonderful hearing from you. I appreciate the words of wisdom and the insights that you shared with us and ultimately with our DECA members and leaders. Jasleen, thank you for being our fearless leader today and taking us through the questions. If you are watching this as a DECA member or a DECA advisor and you want to learn more about the MDA or the MDA Telethon, please do visit us at mda.org. There is so much that we are able to do as an organization because of partners like DECA. We simply could not do our mission critical work without you. So thank you for the long-term partnership, and we're excited to move into a new year and really excited to work even more with DECA members and students. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email us at studentservices@mdausa.org. And thank you so much for your time today. Thank you again to our illustrious panelists and presenters.